Welcome to the Windy City's Finest On Location with Mac and Perry in Grande Prairie at the Grande Prairie Live Theater. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is...
Tahnia.
Yeah, so Tam, I'm so glad you get to hang out with us, get to learn about you and your art. But first we're going to learn a little about you, and we're going to play some games and have some fun.
Amazing. Like I said, this one makes me nervous, but let's go for it.
Let's do it, yeah. So we've got 3 different games. The first one is just trivia. How are you at trivia?
Terrible.
Perfect. That's great. So we've got some Grande Prairie trivia, but don't worry because we're not trivia experts either, and so it's not going to be very difficult trivia.
Amazing.
And if you live here, I'm sure it'll be super easy to figure out. Just kind of fun. So I'll do a Grande Prairie trivia, and then you're going to do a trivia about Perry for me. It'll be great. All right. First question. We're going back to 1926.
Yes.
Yes.
Before I was ever even born. Yeah, I have that pre-womb memory.
So in 1926, a visiting representative of the Canadian Wildlife Service discovered what in the Grande Prairie area, eventually declaring it home of the A, northern flicker, B, trumpeter swan, C, northern river otter, or D, woodland caribou?
Well, I would love for it to be the otter. It is the trumpeter swan.
See? Easy. You got it. B, trumpeter swan. Lovely. Easy. Great. Another history-related question. So in 2014, marked the 100th anniversary of the city of Grande Prairie. So as a legacy project, the city named 100 blank after citizens who contributed significantly to the community. Is it A, trumpeter swans, which I think, okay, which would be fun to name, B, streets, C, seats on city benches, or D, parks? Any guesses? A, B, C, or D?
I really want it to be trumpeter swans.
Right? They had a lot of trouble naming the trumpeter swans, and they flew away. No, it's actually D, parks.
We have that many parks?
Apparently, that's what the internet said. You have 100 parks, and they are named after people from Grande Prairie who are significant and interesting.
Yeah, I buy in.
Yeah. So our next game is called This or That. And we just have this hat that we brought, and it has questions like coffee or tea, cats or dogs.
Oh, I have to pick things.
Yeah.
This
it's
is
very
not my forte.
It's just 2 things. Don't worry about it. Yeah, and so if you're more of a coffee person, you'll say coffee, and they'll say I love coffee too, and then we'll be friends. If you say tea, it's fine.
Are we enemies now? Is this like?
We'll see. Anyways, but just to get to know you, super simple, just this or that. So how about you pick the first one?
Okay. Fiction or nonfiction?
I would go with nonfiction. I like to learn things. And so, yeah, almost never read fiction books. No time. I like to learn. So how about you?
I'm also a nonfiction reader.
Yeah.
That's the section of the bookstore you'll always find me in.
What have you read lately that you liked?
Honestly, I'm reading a ton of different things right now. There's a book called Special Berries that I'm reading, which is actually a poetry book, but it's by an Indigenous author.
The Gift Economy.
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
How far in are you?
I'm about halfway through it. Poetry's actually, I mean, technically I'm jumping ahead in this entire section, but poetry is like a really big factor that I use in a lot of my art forms as well. So we get 2 different sections in my bookshelf. It's either poetry or nonfiction books. So you get one or the other.
Yeah, maybe you mix them together
sometimes.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's a good book. Service Berry, good book. All right. So our last game, we call it...
The really stressful one.
The really stressful one. Yeah, we call it Tumbling Towers. And so with this game, if you've played Tumbling Towers before...
Not to violate copyright.
Yeah. Apparently you can't pick from the top 3.
Oh, that's rude.
Yeah. But other than that, yeah, you can poke around and then pull one out and then put it on top when you're done. But yeah, each block has a corresponding number, and they have lovely questions that we ask people. Open-ended question like, what's your perfect day look like, or something like that. So yeah, I will do the first one,
okay.
So you don't have to stress about it. I'll find one that's loose. Oh, it's loose.
In the game immediately.
Nah, I don't want that one. Okay, here's one. 33. 33. All right. What's your guilty pleasure?
Actually, this is like really niche for right now. I don't know if you're on TikTok. You're not on TikTok. Okay. This is going to make no sense for you then. TikTok has these like really bad. Do you remember like way back when like or not, whatever it was called, like Hallmark, whatever those things were on TV.
Yeah.
They were like the bad made for TV movies.
Still around, I think. But
Yeah. So they've shortened them into like 1-minute episodes on TikTok, and they're terribly written. They're terribly acted. They make absolutely no sense. There's a lot of like slapping of people for no reason, and the acting is really bad that you can basically see the slap miss the person. They're horrible. They're terrible. The plots are not good. They're so fun to watch. And so like me and 2 really good friends of mine will find, you're supposed to pay per episode. We're not going to pay per episode. We find them on Dailymotion. We watch the thing all the way through and we rate them. Like we're like, okay, this one's made our top 5 list. And they're terrible, but absolute guilty pleasure. Like I've watched a scene where someone gets kidnapped, but the male protagonist literally watches the woman get kidnapped until she's put into the car, and then he's like, oh, I should help her, and then goes to run to the car like 10 minutes later, and then goes, gosh golly, I missed it. And that's not an exaggeration. That's his literal reaction. That's my current guilty pleasure.
Nice. What makes you want to watch those?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. Like they're terrible. They're just very funny for no reason. Like they're not great. And I think they all know. Like I think they all know they're badly acted. Like there's something about it where you're like, you all know what's going on. Like you know what audience you're pandering to. And so there's something about it that you just
can't look away.
You just gotta watch.
Nice. I don't know. My mind just went to food all of a sudden. I don't know why. Before I'm like, oh, food. I just love like some popcorn with like nutritional yeast on it. That sounds like very not guilty pleasure. That sounds very healthy. But if there's enough margarine on it, then it's not healthy. Just love it. So delicious. That's my guilty pleasure, I guess.
I feel like mine's a lot guilty.
I spend all my time just eating popcorn. No. But I just enjoy the taste, and it's just like watching a movie. You just have to have the popcorn, right? So, I don't need it. I'm never hungry usually. I just love it. So
sometimes you just need the dopamine food.
Right? Yeah, it's good. That was my guilty pleasure. Great. Yeah. Well, that's our get to know you icebreaker segment. That's all the time we have. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit.
And we're not enemies.
No, we are friends now. All right. So this is the Windy City's Finest on location with Mac and Perry in Grande Prairie here at the Grande Prairie Live Theater. I'm Mac. He's Perry, and this is
Tahnia.
We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome once again to the Windy City's Finest on location in Grande Prairie at none other than the Grande Prairie Live Theater. He's Mac, I'm Perry, and this is...
Still Tahnia.
Still Tahnia, yes. And I very much enjoyed your repertoire or repartee with Mac in the first segment there. And yeah, I'm super excited to jump into your artistic journey and learn a bit more about that. And just for people watching, could you give us like a really broad overview of your artistic practice, maybe currently, just so we have an idea of what it is you do?
This is both my favorite and least favorite question that I totally knew was coming. And I always find the hardest to answer.
For sure.
I'm someone who's like always had a really hard time talking about like myself and my artistic practice because it's always involved so many different people. There was a small jump scare there, but
Max
everything's fine.
So you find this difficult. We're not making it any easier. But
no, that actually makes it easier.
Okay, great.
It's like way less stress. I think because like a lot of my artistic journey has involved so much community and so much community building that it seems weird to just focus on myself in it. But I've been an artist, honestly, I always say kind of ever since I was born, because I feel like that's where the story has started. It's just that, I mean, in society's world, I wasn't like a practiced artist or anything like that. But I think art for me has always been tied to like how you see the world and how you experience the world. And like when we were kids, we experienced it with so much imagination and so much play. And a lot of that imagination and play is something that I continue to carry in my work and is something that's so important to me. And so my journey as an artist for me has kind of just basically been my whole life. And that's what I carry forward into my practice now, and kind of in everything that I do is that kind of sense of play. And then eventually you kind of have to go, all right, we have to refine something because people are expecting a finished product out of this, whether it's like a theater show or a finished painting. But I've always kind of believed that that process is way more important than whatever that finished piece is, because that process is like where you start finding those like really big components of yourself, your practice, what it is that you wanted to say in the first place, and like learn those bits and pieces, not just about your artistic practice, but like who you are as a person. Absolutely. And so that's kind of how I sum up, I guess, my artistic vision and person and sense of self.
I love that, and I think that's a great introduction, especially broad. I asked broadly what it is, and I love that. I think that's a great intro, especially hearing that like imagination and play, and also you mentioned community, and so I'd love to hear a bit more about those three things. But like community, what has that looked like? Either maybe if we start at the beginning, not necessarily when you were born, but like your earliest kind of memory engaging with an artistic discipline.
It all started on a dark and stormy day, July 8th of 1990. No, that was actually when I was born. I mean, if we want to get like really literal, it would have started on the playground. But in terms of like the first like time that I saw myself as an artist, wasn't actually until I was in college. And so before college, I had kind of dabbled. Like I had done like high school drama, and thought of myself as a graphic designer when I was in high school. And then I look back at those designs, and I will tell you right now, those pamphlets are not good. But I thought myself a designer. But I think that sense of like community really started coming in those first like couple of college courses that I took from a really early mentor, who's still a very good mentor to me, Annie Smith. She's now teaching in BC, and I still reach out to her. She sends me a Christmas letter every Christmas. It's very fun. I get to hear all about her life, and she taught me so much foundationally of what it's like to have that first like theater family, and to have that community, to kind of be able to bounce ideas off of each other. And that what it was called back in like 2010, 2011, what we kind of know now in North America as devised theater, was first introduced to me as collective creation. And so my very first drama class was called DR 1490, and it was Introduction to the Dramatic Process. And we had done, it was called Lantern Tours, and it's down at the Heritage Walk. If you are like, I really want to see some things in Grande Prairie, down at Muskosipi, they've got the Heritage Village, which is all of the old buildings that used to be Grande Prairie. And so it's got like the old schoolhouse, the Forbes Presbyterian Church, and like all those things. And so what they would do around October is they would put actors in each of those buildings, and they would create scenes to come to life, and then patrons could walk around, and when they went into the buildings would essentially come to life. And so that was all created by our class, and we would create our scenes collectively. And so that was like our first real toe dip into the world of collective creation and building off of each other. And so like that's the first one that kind of pops into my mind.
Yeah, community, and I'm also getting this sense of like location.
Yeah.
So I'd also love to hear like, Grande Prairie, being here. I know that you traveled a little bit, and we'll talk about that, but as far as community here, what does that look like for you? And even in relation to the city, like the geographical place itself.
Grande Prairie is such an interesting place to be, because there's such like an interesting arts community here. And there's so many different kinds of artists here. And it's really fun, because when you guys reached out to me, I said, yeah, we've got like so many different fun artists here to work with. And they're all dabbling in different fields and different practices. And a lot of the way that I approach a show is like, how many different ways can we bring art into this? And like, how many different artists can we feature? And so a lot of like the visual arts community can come into shows, and like they can be featured. Same with musicians. And there's so much that happens here. Like the Bear Creek Folk Festival happens here all across our hills. And so all of our hills come to life with stages of music. And so all of these different like geographical locations can be used in different shows. And so a couple of summers ago, I run a small collective as well, Cavalcade Theater Company. And we do a lot of like found-based theater. And so we don't actually practice out of a building. We practice out of just really our back pockets for the most part. Like
Love it.
we go to find places that we can put up shows, and we've done shows technically at the amphitheater down in Muskogee, but we actually did the show in the field and had the audience sit on the stage. So that way they kind of saw a reversal of that. And so there's so many fun little places. Campfires we've done shows at where the audience sat around a campfire and we did campfire stories, and we brought the stories to life, kind of like ghost stories around a campfire. And so that community and like place has become something that I play with a lot in what I do, both visually and theatrically. So
I love that, and yeah, I love that idea of trying to bring different disciplines into like theater and creation. And I did have another thought.
I know I info dumped a lot there.
No, I love it. I love it. But it was in relation to maybe what people might think of as typical theater or traditional theater. And then, yeah, like getting out of a building, even for some people might be like, wait, I can do theater in this place? And I'm just curious how that maybe ties into the other things you mentioned of like play and imagination.
Yeah.
And what that brings to mind, like how does that inform the process, I guess?
I think because so much of what I do is like, what can we do? It's really broken down that idea of like, okay, we have to do it in a theater. We have to do it on a proscenium stage. It kind of has just broken down those walls for me. And so it also like comes into my visual arts practice as well in paintings, and we'll kind of go back and forth between the two. But when you take out those confines and we take out the idea that it has to be in a building, or we take out the idea that it has to be on a stage, you're like, how many different weird ideas can I do? And there are some things that are just totally impractical. Like at one point I was like, what if we did a show in an elevator, you guys? And like, the idea's there, the idea's there. It hasn't gone away. It's still sitting in what I call the marinating pot. But like how you sit an audience in the elevator, like there's a lot of practical things that have to be addressed beforehand. But you don't shut them down right away. You kind of go, okay, we can't actually sit an audience in the elevator, but how can we keep the idea of the elevator and like still bring that to an audience? And so it just becomes this big like, okay, so we have an elevator, but here's a box. So like you're just kind of constantly playing and building on it. And when you get to stay in that sense of play and you kind of ignore that refine section until you absolutely have to get there, the ideas just get to compound on each other. And I think that that's why I like that stage so much, because it's just forever getting to learn and forever getting to grow with it. Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear a little bit about, you had a project that you worked on called Under the Umbrella.
Yes.
And I'd be curious to hear maybe about in that, were there any examples of this idea of like things that you learned just from that process? And we can talk about it generally as well. Maybe let's give a broad overview of the project first, and then see if we can, some things that you learned from it. But yeah.
So Under the Umbrella was a devised show that I did last year with Cavalcade Theatre Company. And it was a pride show that we had put on. And what was really fun about that show is that the group of performers that we had, I think only 3 of us, if I'm remembering correctly, had any sort of theater background among a cast of 7, if I'm remembering correctly. And so the other 4 had no stage experience, had no theater experience beyond like high school per se. And it was like a really rich experience to be able to bring queer folk into this world where we were just learning from each other and learning from experience. And the idea behind the show was that we were all like attending this barbecue, and the audience actually sat in and among all of the actors. And so if you were coming to see the show, you were actually coming to hang out with your bros, and we were all at a barbecue together, and it was actually a surprise party for the one actor who was coming in. And so when you came in, one of the actors was like, oh yeah, you're here for so-and-so's birthday party, like come in, they're gonna come in, we're gonna yell surprise, yada, 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 yada. And so when that actor walked in, everyone yelled surprise, and then you find out that actor's partner literally just broke up with them. And we intentionally did it that way because we wanted the audience to like really engage with the show. And the best way to do that is to get them all to really engage and then just make everybody really awkward really fast, because everyone's had that experience. And then we wanted them to be able to just like really get that comfortable feeling of just hanging out in someone's backyard. And so we all had, like, creating the show was really fun because we created that backyard together and those friendship vibes together, and shared those experiences together. And we were like, how do we create this like camaraderie with our audience? And so it was singing songs together and like doing lip sync battles together. Like it was just all of this fun. And then we put a whole bunch of queer history into it. And so you'd have this really fun barbecue vibe, and then we'd kind of shift really quickly into bringing in the Stonewall riots and understanding why Stonewall existed, and then bringing in like the Pulse shootings and the recent shootings that were happening at queer clubs, and understanding why Pride still existed and why that was still something that was being actively fought for in terms of rights. And so that way we could have that camaraderie and still understand that people are people at the end of the day. These are just our friends. Like we all just exist together. And so part of the learning in that experience for me was like how you bring that sense of humanity together while bringing that message of importance without having people disengage. Because that not disengaging was really important.
If we could like backtrack a little bit towards like the kind of like equity and advocacy part of things, what can you tell me about that, and how does it show up in your practice? And is it a day-to-day thing that's always in that simmering pot, or is it always at the forefront of the brain, or is it? How does that show up for you?
I think it's everywhere. One of the things that I really love about the arts foundationally is that when we look at the history of the arts, is that it's all come out of political unrest. Like it's all come from a state of wanting to be able to say something, but not necessarily being able to say it in whatever your plain language was. And I think there's something really magical about that. Like art as its form, in just its natural form, is a unifying language. Whether that's painting, whether that's dance, whether it's music, whether it's theater, it's just common language at some point. We can watch the same show and bond over the same show, and we might have different like takes on the show at the end. We might have a different interpretation on a painting, but it's still common language in one way or another. And I think that there's something really beautiful about that, and there's something really accessible about that. Art seems to be a space that we can actually unify a community and allow everybody to experience a similar experience and bring everything together. And that's, like I said, something magical that we have and something really powerful that we have. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that, and not to sound like super pretentious and be like, you know, mainstream media. And I don't mean it in that way, but I think that sometimes we lose sight of that because we have so much art available at our fingertips, and that we maybe lose the appreciation of what all of that is because we can consume it so easily. But it wasn't always so easy to consume. And when we start to listen and we start to really look at what those art pieces are saying, what those songs are saying, what those shows are saying, they're always a little bit deeper. Like when we're watching theater shows, they're always coming at a point of conflict in someone's life, because otherwise it would be a really boring show to watch if everyone was just like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I would actually probably still watch it because there's something really like anti-theater about it. Like I'm like, there's actually something really cheeky about that. But that in itself is saying something, right? Like whatever you're watching or listening to is saying something. And there's a reason that music speaks to us in the way that it does. And so there's something unifying about that. And so it goes back to community. And so that advocacy comes in because you can always kind of push a message through that way.
Yeah, and bring people together.
And bring people together. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
and energy. This has been the Windy City's Finest, on location in Grande Prairie at the Grande Prairie Live Theater. He's Mac, I'm Perry, and this is me,
Tahnia.
We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Windy City's Finest, on location here in Grande Prairie at the Grande Prairie Live Theater. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is?
Tahnia.
Yeah, so today I really enjoyed learning about your artistic journey with Perry and what you're all about, and got a few little hints in there about your artistic practice with your visual arts. So get to see some pieces, which I'm really excited about. So let's get started. So tell me about this piece.
This is, I said just before we started this is going to be a fun game called Let Me See If I Remember What Was Happening When I Made These. So this one was actually a self-portrait that I had made a number of years ago. It doesn't much look like me anymore, which I actually think is really fun, partially because it's a capture of who I was at the time when I was making this. And that is probably one of the things that I like about visual arts practices is that they get to have that little bit of self in them, but they're like snapshots in time. And there's lots that you can kind of pick apart in them. And so a little bit of fun that you'll see in here is a lot of what you'll see under here is the underpainting. And a lot of what I like to keep in my paintings is the underpainting. And that's like basically all of the like beginning layers of your painting. Over time, I have grown really attached to my underpaintings. And there was a period where I hated painting anything on the top of it because I was like, oh, but it looks so cute. And then a visual arts teacher of mine was like, Tahnia, you have to put more paint on it. And I was like, okay. And so then that's kind of what happened here. And then this was actually probably one of the first couple pieces that I started using dry florals and dry foliage in. And this came out of a practice. You asked me actually really early on, way back in our first segment, if there was anything that I kept. And one of the things that I always keep is flowers. And so when somebody gives me flowers for really anything, so if it's just a nice day and they gave me flowers, or if there's like a celebration and they give me flowers, I keep the flowers and I dry them out. And then I store them and I know what they're for. And then I hold on to them until it calls. And so these actual flowers were from a graduation ceremony. And so eventually I crumpled them and it felt right to put them on this piece. And so that's what you see here. And I've kept this one for a really long time because this was a really big transitional phase for me. It was a time in my life that I was really kind of coming into my own in my voice and kind of coming into my own as the person that I am now. And so it's a little bit of an homage to that version of Tahnia, who went through a lot of stuff and got to transform into this version of Tahnia, who's kind of tackling the world. And so, yeah, I'm fond of her. Even though this is the she-her version of Tahnia, before I was they-them Tahnia, she went through a lot of stuff, and I appreciate this version.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously it's still in some way a part of you, right? So
Always.
Yeah, of course, yeah. No, I think it's just lovely, and yeah, I love the inclusion of the flowers there. And was that, like, I know you said it was like from a graduation? Like, would that have been around like the same time, or would it have been a different time?
No, this is actually a very different. Like, these flowers were from, would have been my first graduation, which was 2012. So they would have been 2012 flowers, and this was painted in 2020, 2021.
Okay, so yeah, so you kept keeping for quite a while. Yeah. No,
it was
great.
kind of it marked like an end of a chapter. It felt like for me. Yeah,
so it was fitting. Yeah. Oh, it's lovely. All right, we're gonna move on to the next piece here. It's a little bigger.
Oh yeah.
Let's see.
So sorry.
That would fit. No, don't be sorry. Just maybe you take some of it.
Yeah, this. At some point, I stopped painting small scale, and I insisted on painting canvases that are as large as I am.
Okay. If you want to move it behind us, but.
I think that. Yeah, there we go. If you took it there, see, way easier.
Cool. Yeah.
So I alluded. I don't know. I'm just gonna say at some point I talked about because that feels right. My first nature paint of the season, and this was actually my first nature paint. So this is not a finished painting at all. This was the first one that I took out this season, which was probably 3 weeks ago now. I go down to the old Byzantium town site, load up my Jeep, and kind of go exist down there. And so this is when I got into the feud with the bee. The bee just really wanted to hang out. I'm scared of bees for some reason, even though I know they're not going to hurt me. And then I kind of just let the painting tell me what it's going to be. And I was just saying earlier that I don't know what this one's going to be yet, but I have a feeling that there's kind of two bodies of some sort, two people, two spirits of some sort in here. And I'm kind of just letting, it's in the marinating pot. My paintings also go in the marinating pot.
It's a big pot.
There's a lot happening in there while they kind of decide where they're going to be. I'm actually going to start a 2-year visual arts project. And it's going to be 35 paintings to represent 35 years of life. And I'm going to have the exhibition open on my 35th birthday, July 8th of 2027. And so July 8th of 2025 launches the hard launch of it. And this is essentially the underpainting for one of the paintings that would be featured in that exhibition. And so it's a bit of a vulnerable project. It might be the most vulnerable project that I've ever launched. It's also the biggest project I've ever launched. And so the name itself is Projecting 35, as in we're making it to 35 and we're projecting onwards from there. Mm-hmm. And so it's all about life and vulnerabilities and being able to take that voice back and being able to tell my story my way in my words and not letting anybody else try and tell it for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look forward to that exhibit. That'll be amazing.
Yeah. And that's what this will eventually be when I figure out what's in it.
Nice. And I know you talk about like process is a big part of that. What would that look like with the process of finishing this piece possibly?
So a lot of the project that I'm looking at and a lot of like how this grows and why this one's gone into the marinating project or marinating pot is that I started this canvas after I cemented the project. And for some of those years, I actually don't have formative memories. And I mean, we all know, like psychology says, we don't have formative memories before the age of 5. Like that's just the way our brains work. And so I've been building scaffolding to figure out, like, how do you, if I don't have memories from 7, how am I supposed to build the year 7 canvas? And so I'm going to be essentially asking my mom for all my baby albums and seeing what it is that I can find in terms of stimulus from that, and seeing what sort of sense memory you can pull up, whether those be songs, smells, anything like that you can kind of get stimulus from. And then much like I go down to the nature and sit and listen to music and throw paint on a canvas and go, tell me what you're going to be, allow that to be the process, right? Have that ambiance and that music, the familiar memories, and let that be the process of allowing the canvas to tell you what it's going to be.
Nice. Well, that's great. Yeah. Lovely. I'm so excited about that. All right. I think we'll move on to this next piece.
The danger piece.
Yeah, this is gonna be quite interesting. I'm not going to get rid of this one. I'll just put it back here and Perry will take it away.
We're just going to magically make this happen.
Okay. All right, we're good there. Great. So this is quite a unique piece, which I'm excited to learn about. Can I touch it here?
Yeah.
Great. So tell me about this piece.
This is the danger piece. She's actually one of my favorite pieces. So we were talking about this one a little bit before. This one is one of the ones that has kind of integrated all of the different components of my practice. And so the underpainting that you see in this one actually used to be a very large canvas that was spread out across a field, wherein a movement piece was done on the entire canvas. And then that movement piece was created from impulse from a spoken word piece that I had written as well. And the whole project itself is on the idea of ownership of one's body and consent over one's body. And so the painting itself is very much around the idea of consent. And so you can actually see there is a woman's body painted in here. And her nipple on the breast is actually made of the shards of glass. And so in...
The other way, yeah, I got you.
Yeah. You're like, I'm missing something.
I see the boob, I got it.
Yeah, we're there. We've understood physiology now. And so up here we've got the dried flower petals. And in among the dried flower petals is actually shards of glass, which is what creates the glitter. And so any shimmer that you get from there is actually a glitter that's made from glass. And so the idea is, and why we call it the danger painting, is if you start getting in there to touch the texture, you actually will be stabbed by the shards of glass because a painting cannot consent. The spoken word piece that came along with this was also around that idea of other people trying to dictate what one can do with their body and like how one's body should look, and the understanding that women identifying persons and women presenting people are more often sexually assaulted than other persons. and that idea that other people seem to think that they have ownership over other people's bodies. And so that's where this entire piece came from. And it has a very near and dear place in my heart. And I have a lot of love for her. And it was the actual movement piece and spoken word piece was also videographed by a local artist by the name of Devin Burbank, who was a delight to work with. We went out to a field at like 6 a.m. It was freezing, and we did the movement piece for several hours in the morning, which involved a lot of paint all over the body and like a whole lot of mess.
One question comes to mind when you talk about this canvas, right? You said this was this very large piece, right? And I see it's a lot smaller. Like, did you keep the other pieces?
Yep.
Do other artists have them? What happened to those?
The rest of the canvas is still with me.
Okay.
It's all in my storage unit, which is where I'm keeping all of my art stuff, because you can only have so much art stuff at once. And it'll wind up being made into a series of paintings at some point in time. Again, the rest of them are in the marinating pot. There's a lot happening in that marinating pot.
Yeah, I just feel like there might be like a connection because maybe from from that experience. So, yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, well, I think that's all the time we have for this segment. Yeah, it's been really, really cool to see your work and to appreciate it. It's been really great. So yeah, thank you so much for showing it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this has been the Windy City's Finest on location here in Grande Prairie at the Grande Prairie Live Theater. I'm Mac. This is Perry. And one last time, this is
Tahnia.
It's Mac and Perry in the place. Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry.
Go live to create.
Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry invite you to stay.